A week ago on Sunday was the busiest day on record for travel in the United States, specifically air travel. Between the crowds, the delays, and the soaring ticket prices, flying right now feels downright miserable. In his new book, Ganesh Sitaraman writes about how the U.S. airline industry lost its way and how it could be reformed to serve customers once again. Welcome to New Day, and please help us understand how. You were a law professor at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. How was your flight to Seattle? I'm just curious.
It was okay. One of the first times on the book tour where I haven't had any delays or other issues, but it was long, and the middle seats are always tough.
They really are tough. They're awful. It's uncomfortable. It's just not fun anymore. I remember when flying was fun. We'd get dressed up. It was an event, but it is miserable. Why is that? And what are some of your biggest pet peeves in air travel?
2 words. It comes down to public policy. All the things that make flying miserable, whether it's the small seats, the extra fees to pick your seat or check a bag, the connections, delays, cancellations, these are all a function of policy choices. Just like in every other area, we have rules to make sure kids' toys are safe and that the food we eat is safe. We also can set rules to make sure airline flying is not as miserable as it is now.
Right. So what is happening with airlines? Because, the demand is not, is it greater, or is it just that they're trying to cut costs and slim things down?
Well, the biggest thing is that airlines are operating in a kind of cutthroat capitalistic environment. And what that means is that it helps them if they fit more seats on the plane, if they squeeze more of us into the planes. And that may be miserable for us, even though it's good for them. And that's really the tension here, is extra fees are good for their bottom line, but bad for our pocketbooks.
Okay, so where does regulation fit into all that? And you say deregulation is to blame.
Yeah, so from the 1930s to the 1970s, we had a system in America that I think of as a regulated, stable system. And Congress's goal was to try to get airline service to all parts of the country in a way that airlines wouldn't need subsidies or go bankrupt, but also wouldn't become monopolistic and exploit consumers. And they basically did that pretty well through a regulated system where we had more people flying, prices were going down, and lots of innovations like jets.
Yeah.
And then in the 1970s, folks said, let's deregulate this industry and have real market competition work. The problem is we didn't get real market competition. For a few years, there was a lot of competition, and then lots of bankruptcies, lots of mergers, and we now have the same big airlines with actually less competition than we had in the 1970s.
Right, we've seen so many, Continental, all these airlines that we don't see flying anymore. I have to ask, airports and airlines, they have hubs, right? What role do hubs play in squashing airline competition, and why is this allowed to happen?
Well, one of the big challenges with hubs is exactly that. When you have a single airport that has 70, 80% from one airline, there's just less competition. And less competition means higher prices, and it can mean worse quality service, too. And what we've seen over time is airlines increasingly concentrating into a smaller and smaller number of hubs. That means you have to run that half mile from one end to the other when you're connecting through Dallas or Atlanta. And for the country as a whole, it actually means a less resilient airline system. Bad weather in one hub could actually mean delays and cancellations that affect the whole country.
Interesting. I'd never thought about that, which is why we're glad you're here talking to us about this. And speaking of which, a lot of people might hear you say more regulation, but they would maybe think, oh, more red tape is a bad thing. Is it? Is it not?
Regulations aren't something that are good or bad inherently. They're just rules. And you can write rules that are good. You can write rules that are bad. And so my view is what we need to do is design and write rules that are good, that work well to accomplish the things we want as a country. And we should get rid of bad regulations, but we shouldn't get rid of good ones, and we should try to have more good ones.
You were talking about how things changed in the 1970s, and it just didn't work for us. Is that kind of what led to when we saw what happened with the pandemic and how the airlines just struggled to recover and needed bailouts?
One of the big shifts that happened with deregulation was really unleashing airlines into this kind of boom and bust cycle, where there are some years where airlines are making money hand over fist, like the 1990s, like the 2010s. One airline CEO in the 2010s said he thought they would never lose money again. And then there are these big shocks,
Yeah.
9/11, COVID, demand goes down, and the airlines come running to Congress asking for taxpayer support and bailouts. And here's the key thing. The airlines are too important to fail.
Yes.
And they're an essential service for the country. They're essential to commerce. They're essential to our economy. And so Congress gives them that support. And I think we shouldn't have a system like that. I want to have healthy, successful airlines that are making profits, but also that aren't going bankrupt and don't need bailouts.
You're right.
And we can have a system like that. We just need to put rules in place to make sure that happens.
That and not charging me for pretzels, man.
Exactly.
What happened to all the nice stuff? Remember when we had blankets? Don't even get me started. But I do want to talk about something far more important than blankets. Recently, the New York Times released a shocking report about the state of air traffic controllers. We're talking falling asleep on the job, operating while under the influence. What can be done to support the people on the ground, the air traffic controllers, who are keeping us safe in the skies?
This is a really important story and question. And again, it's a real public policy challenge. You know, Congress needs to support air traffic controllers. And part of that means the kind of funding that's necessary for staffing, for hiring people who don't have to be overworked, and who want to stay in their jobs. And that's a really important part of what policymakers can do to make flying safer.
That's so key. How can the average person, what can we do to better control our flying experiences? You know, obviously we have to work within the confines that we are dealing with now. What can we do?
Well, number one, I would say, is be prepared.
Okay.
Be mentally prepared for delays, for cancellations, for all the little frustrating things.
Yeah.
And number two is be practically prepared. You know, bring a snack, bring a water bottle you can fill up after security, bring a book. I would say my book's a great one for if you're delayed or canceled, especially. And then the last thing is don't blame the people who work for the airlines or who are working in the airport. They're trying their best if you're delayed or canceled or have any other issues, and it's not their fault that you're in this situation.
So good to remember. I was on the phone with Delta for 40 minutes because I couldn't do something online. Hold for 40 minutes. When that person got online, I reminded myself, be kind to this person. You're about the 50th person they dealt with today.
That's right.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for writing this book.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And if you'd like to hear more from Ganesh about how his book, Why Flying is Miserable and How We Can Fix It, he'll be at a book event tonight at Town Hall, Seattle, so go check that out.